Welcome to another episode of the Means of Grace podcast. I'm Jesse Enniss, and I am grateful that you have chosen to begin this year with a commitment to our conference podcast. So as we step into 2026, there's a question a lot of us are carrying, whether we've actually named it out loud or not. What am I still holding that I don't need anymore? And just as important, what do I dare not let go of? Because we don't start a new year empty-handed. We bring things with us: habits, assumptions, wounds, wisdom, and hope. With me, as always, is my co-host, the Reverend John Yeager. John, how was your Christmas break?
It was pretty good, pretty good. There was driving, decorating, eating, driving. A lot of driving. Family, friends, and it was good. It was good. How was yours?
Good. Had wonderful Christmas Eve services at church, and got an opportunity to spend some time with my mom and my brothers and with my family and stuff. So it was good. The kids were bouncing off the walls essentially. So they had a fantastic Christmas. And I think as a parent, as long as the kids are having fun, I'm having fun. So it's all
That's
good.
right. Absolutely. And, all that time in between places has given me time to think. And I thought about New Year's traditions. I thought about refreshing, and I thought about, silly words we put in our Board of Ordained Ministry, like sanctifying, right? That continued recycling of ourselves and renewing ourselves.
Yeah.
So what should we carry into 2026 because it gives us life? And what should we finally set down because maybe it never really did?
So let's talk about what we're seeing around the conference. We'll name some events in our country that are shaping ministry as well. We'll also kind of keep ourselves honest with two familiar segments that if you're a friend of the pod, you should know well: Epic Fail and Strangely Heartwarming, because ministry lives sometimes between those two more often than we admit. So no episode of The Means of Grace would be complete without a little history. So John, we just moved into 2026. Tell us, why 2026?
Well, of course, the short answer that we would all immediately say is because year zero, Jesus was born. Right? But why did we start? When did we start using it? Was it immediate? It was not. So the first use of this calendar that we have that says we are currently living roughly 2,026 years after the birth of Jesus. But strictly speaking, there was never a year zero. The system that counts years from the birth of Jesus jumps from 1 BC to 1 AD. And that person was first proposed it in Rome in the early 6th century, around 525. So it took a while, a few hundred years. And the person responsible was Dionysius Exiguus, a monk and scholar working in Rome. And what was he trying to do? He was not reinventing time, and he wasn't trying to. He was trying to calculate, rather, the date for Easter. Up until then, years were commonly numbered using the reigns of the Roman emperors. And this is what got that monk all riled up, time was used by the Diocletian era, which counted years from the reign of Emperor Diocletian. However, Diocletian was remembered primarily for persecuting Christians.
Whoops.
So Dionysius hated that. He hated the idea that the church's calendar was being anchored by a persecutor. So he got to work, and he proposed a new system. Let's count the years from the incarnation of Jesus Christ. He labeled the year he believed Jesus was born as Anno Domini 1, in the year of our Lord. So, but not all things like that catch fire. Not everything is immediately trendy back then. So as you can imagine, people were like, you want us to start over? You want us to use an entirely new, just like today, right? You try to tell the church members, hey, we're going to change the calendar this year. No, what are you doing, Pastor? The feast, the potluck is this day. The Brunswick stew is this day. The fish fry is this day. Don't go messing with any of this stuff, right?
Exactly. It's tradition.
People don't. That's right. People don't change. Not at all. We're the same people. And so it wasn't widely used. It wasn't really until a monk, an English monk writing in the early 8th century, started using it exclusively as the year for time. The earliest, now, that was Anno Domini, and it started to catch fire then, especially in the English-speaking world. And then, we controlled a lot of things. But it's interesting to me, one side note, because I think it's important, a couple of things. One, that it took between 500 and 800 years before anybody really started using Jesus' birth as the moment of zero and counting our years. So that was a while. But the second thing to note is that people get confused with BCE and CE now.
Yeah.
And mostly because when you do the numbering, it's the exact same. And so, of course, I did a little bit of research. I was curious why and when that change was made. And the earliest consistent use of CE actually appears in Jewish academic writings. And of course, as soon as I read that, I thought, huh? And then it took me another minute to go, of course.
Yeah.
Jewish scholars were doing very serious historical work, scientific, philosophical work, inside Christian universities, but they did not confess Jesus as Lord. So Anno Domini became a BCE and CE, before the Common Era and the Common Era. The Enlightenment grabbed a hold of it after that, and that is history.
Good old Enlightenment. I love that. So let's start with what's worth carrying into this new year, 2026. BCE? No.
No,
CE.
now it's CE.
CE.
So before the Common Era, that would have been
Before
long.
the Common Era. Yeah.
It's also important to note that when the monk was making that date, it was a wild miss. Jesus was more likely born between 4 and 8 BCE.
Yeah.
BC.
But isn't that the story of Christianity, though? That we're all imperfect.
Oh, yeah.
And so
That's why we have 4 Gospels instead of 1.
And so, yeah, exactly. So even when we try to do things for God, we mess them up anyway. If you're reading the lectionary during the season, you'll read a bit about Jacob and about David, folks who messed up royally. But
I see what you did there.
but God still used them, and so we're still doing that today. We're still trying to live our lives for God, and just missing the mark a bit. So I love how that just kind of continues on with our story. But here's the thing: as we move from time to time, we are carrying things like we mentioned earlier. So what should we carry into this year? And we always have to start with what's worth carrying. And one thing I hope we don't lose is humility, first and foremost. Coming to God with humility, going into this next year with humility, approaching God's people, our families, our friends, our neighbors, especially our neighbors in this difficult time, with humility. The last few years have reminded us that the church does not control outcomes. We plant, we water, we show up, we're present. That's not weakness, that's wisdom.
Yeah. And we need more humility maybe now than ever to just, and I probably, we're going to talk about this a little bit later too, but the humility to maybe let the old church go.
Yeah.
Because I think, and I'm going to talk about this too much now, but we have been victims of our own success. We haven't had to change. We haven't had to butt up against the really, really hard things. And I think we're going to have a lot of humility now about what church can look like going forward. And some of those things might be not what it looked like before.
Yeah.
And that's going to take a lot of humility, especially, and as a ranking member of the old folks, over 40,
Mhm.
we're going to have to start letting some stuff go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's going to take more humility than you've got. So
Yeah.
grab a partner and pray
Yeah.
about it. It's not weakness. The idea of humility and I want to kind of box it here to say that we've never had to really do ministry and just hope that it worked.
Yeah.
We've been able to count, right? For the longest time. Well, how many did you have at the fish fry? 250. It was amazing. How many did you have in worship? 170. It was fantastic. We're going to have to do a lot more. Well, how many did you have in worship? Well, that's not really as important. We had an amazing worship with a limited number of people and faith.
Well, what it makes me think about is just the way that Jesus approached his crucifixion, right? It's this saying, and we talked about this in 2025 with Dan Pizzette, the Metro District Superintendent. And that's one thing that we should take with us, right? The wisdom that we get from our superintendents. But one of the things we talked about at that point was about, being a resurrection people and allowing certain things to die. And, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane is like, if you would let this cup pass from me, please do. But if this is your will, let your will be done. And I think we kind of need to approach everything, right? As we move into this new season of the church, I think we need to say, God, what is your will? Is it your will that parts of our current church culture, the ways that we're currently doing church, is it your will that those things die? Not my will, Lord, but your will. Let me be humble to what you're doing so that the church can flourish, so that we can resurrect something beautiful, because God's the one that's doing that resurrecting work, that growing work in us. And so, like you said, we get to plant, we get to water, and we just get to trust God with the growth. So we'll see where God is taking us in this new year.
Yep, I think that's exactly right. And I'll add connection. We need to be more connected. I think we've learned the hard way that isolation is deadly to ministry. Clergy isolation, church isolation, congregational, both of them.
Both of them, yeah.
Congregational isolation.
Yeah.
We should carry forward the instinct to call to one another, to collaborate, to admit when we're tired, and to lean on each other as a matter of practice, not as a matter of desperation.
Yeah.
Because I feel one of the things I'm nervous about, and I think we're making our shifts, is we forgot at some point how to lean on each other, how to need each other, because we didn't for such a long time.
Or we didn't think we did.
Yeah, we didn't think we did, right. And we had enough coping mechanisms and enough support and structure to kind of let it just be. We had our the connection was always there in some degree, but it wasn't as intense as it's needed now.
Yeah.
And I wonder if churches being so isolated, station churches, right? That's what you want to be. That's right. That for the longest time now, there was some shame, and we're going to get rid of that later too, around not being that station church, right? That self-sustaining singular unit.
Exactly.
I am grateful that we seem to be carrying the connection into 2026 and want it to be stronger.
Yeah. Yeah, I think to your point as well, I think you just have to remember that, we're called to be parts of the body of Christ.
Yeah.
And
not one whole body.
You could say that, your church is made up of different parts of the body of Christ. Absolutely. But your church could only really represent like one system. Yep. Maybe you're the I don't know, the circulatory system or something like that, but you cannot exist on your own. There's no part of the body that gets to exist on its own. And so, we need to remember that that's kind of the core of who we are. And it might seem slow, it might seem inefficient, it might seem like it might feel like it's stifling
Yeah,
certain
keep going.
aspects of things that you
Yeah.
want to do. But I think we need to remember one of the main things of being a part of a Christian community is that we are a part of a network of people and that we exist together. So forsaking that kind of pulls us away from that identity that Christ initially called us to. Christ's prayer was that we would be the way that God is with Christ, the way that Christ is with the Holy Spirit, the way the Spirit is with God the Father, not isolated, but together. And we are being invited into that. And so
That's right.
we are to look at one another the same way.
Yeah. And, now that you mention it, because I talk about the four Gospels, and I tell people this all the time. Well, is the story of Jesus true or false, or true or not? And I go, well, there's four different versions just in the Bibles we carry around. So that would make me think that that God did not want the point to be this is exactly what happened.
Yeah. Four different perspectives.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to throw stones or anything like that, but there are some works that kind of put those gospels together to make one cohesive story. And I think that kind of misses the point. The four are equally important. The four are telling stories from their perspective, and that's a gift to have four different gospels.
It's representing us, right?
Exactly.
It can represent you and me. It can represent two churches, two denominations. It can represent so many things.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's not that we all need to gel together and become one thing. There is beauty in our different perspectives.
Yeah. And there are commonalities in all of it.
Exactly. But that beauty only really gets to shine if we come together. Those gospels are back to back for a reason, so. And
we decided a long time ago, and I think we fell, butt backwards into a good thing, of making the Trinity just a so core belief while simultaneously saying, and we have no idea how it works.
Yeah.
I love that. I love it so much that we believe in something that we can't make work. There's a three body problem. There's lots of different ways to think about how three things don't work well together.
Yeah.
And yet we say, nope, they do.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it hard? Yep. Is it weird and crazy? Yes. But they just do it.
Yeah. And we believe that they do it. That's our faith. That's our faith being active in that.
Yeah, that's right. And we need to emulate it, because I feel like sometimes we go, well, if I don't need it though.
Yeah.
I don't have to. If I can do this on my own, shouldn't I just do that?
Yeah, exactly.
I know the easy answer is yes, but that's the American way, right?
Yeah, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps.
That's right. Just singular, right? Individuals, and to be an individual, self-sustaining unit is the ultimate goal. And I feel like that never should have been any goal.
Yeah,
right?
It's not. It's
definitely
not ours.
Right, and the future for the church is going to be defined by how well we work together, not how well our individual units are working.
Absolutely.
That's okay. We're going to carry the connection in.
We're going to
bring it with us into 2026 better than ever.
Absolutely. And I think we're also going to carry just that permission to experiment too. Not recklessness, not, we
don't have money for that.
We don't have money for that. We are,
but you got it.
We are kind of throwing things at the wall, trying to see what sticks for sure. But we're being very attentive. Being attentive to God in prayer and what God is doing, and seeking God's guidance and counsel and wisdom. We're not chasing trends. So, just because something is popular, we still have to measure that based on where Christ is calling us. But the freedom to try something, maybe something small, to learn from it and to adjust. The freedom to be inspired by different things, not to adopt them, but to adapt them and see how they work in your community. Perfection froze a lot of ministries in the past. And I think curiosity might actually carry us forward. I think a lot in terms of in terms of Sunday morning service, right? We work really, really hard. I think the joke out there is like, what is the pastor doing for the rest of the week? Because really all we do is Sunday morning, but it's like we spend a good chunk of that week preparing for this 1 hour or 2 hour, however long is your
We nap on Monday.
church. We
And then
do nap on Mondays. We recharge and then we come back. But we work really hard at trying to make that Sunday morning perfect, but also kind of remembering the perfection is, it's just not. It's
The
just
pursuit
not
of
possible.
perfection can cost you.
It can. It can. And so we do need to give ourselves a little bit of freedom to say, you know what, that thing that we were planning didn't work, but guess what? We are the only ones that really know that we were shooting for that goal, and
And
sometimes
actually, it ended up working out fine.
yeah,
And in fact, we all laughed, right? Because it was a cool moment. We all came together. Now we've got a core memory. This whole church. I mean, you just gotta go.
Yeah.
Keep moving.
And sometimes it ends up in an epic fail, and then you become a guest on our podcast, and we talk
And you
about
write a
it
book,
as an epic fail. You never know, but that's all a part of being human, right?
Yeah.
Is making those mistakes and learning from them, and being curious through all of it. Because
And we have
sometimes
some
you do
fresh
something
expressions.
perfect.
We focus on that. I think we're
Yeah.
attempting to, but even that's pretty new.
That's pretty new, yeah. And so
Where was that 20 years ago when we didn't need it? And there it is, right? Because we felt like we didn't need it.
we felt like we didn't need it.
And
Yeah.
perfection. Those ministries are great. I mean, I don't know if you have been told this, Jesse, if you've been in any of the meetings where somebody tried to make a change in the ministry when the ministry was going fine.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a very quick why.
Yeah, why would we do that? We've been
Why
doing
would
this.
you remake the? And we've got so many sayings too, and we need to throw them all in the garbage. We have so many. Why reinvent the wheel? Don't change horses midstream. We have all these
If it ain't
wonderful.
broke, don't change it,
If
or
it
don't
ain't
fix
broke,
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Except then we're just, before we know it, we're driving a junker.
Exactly.
It's like it works fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Again, it's like you got to make sure that you're in tune with the Spirit of God, because sometimes you might think that this is going perfectly fine, and the Spirit of God is like, no, this has to go in a different direction. Again, I think about Christ in that, like, Christ is like, yeah, I need to go and be crucified, and Peter's like, not you.
Yeah.
That's never gonna happen. And Jesus is like, get behind me, Satan. Like, I know from your human perspective, things are going great, and that you think that I should be around forever, or you think this ministry should be around forever, or you think this church should be around forever. But sometimes the Spirit of God is moving in a different direction that we don't understand in the moment. And so we just got to make sure that we are in tune with the Spirit when we are seeking to learn from trying something new. But let's never just shut it down. Let's go to God and see what God's got in store for us.
Yeah. It's, one of the things that we don't think about when we say, and we really should, is most of our oldest buildings are churches. And we say that from a very warm, fuzzy place, right? We say it from a very, the church has been around for, that's right. The church stays all the time. And I just can't help but go, you mean our normal society rejuvenates itself like at a rate 5 times that of the church?
Yeah.
You mean the city can change and adapt all around it and the church won't at all?
Yeah.
And I think we need to start moving away from, and that's a great thing. That's the whole point, to going, I wonder if we missed the point.
Yeah. I mean, those two things can exist together. I think we can have our really traditional aspects of the church. We can learn from those things. I mean, as United Methodists with our quadrilateral, I mean, we do emphasize and take from our traditions, but that doesn't mean that we stay there.
No. Can't.
That sometimes those two things need to learn how to coexist.
Yeah, we need that constant, okay, at least every year, let's look at all the things we do and why, right?
Yeah.
And
are they still serving the purposes of God in this time?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, that means that certain things that we have loved, that we have cherished, that we've poured into, both with our time, our talents, our gifts, our service, some of those things, unfortunately, need to be cut, but that doesn't mean that your relationship with God gets cut. And that
No,
is the
that's right.
most important part.
And it's tough because I've been in those meetings where and the hardest ones are when it's the next generation that's trying with all of their love and might to maintain the traditions and some of the things that their parents had also carried, and they're feeling like failures
Yeah.
because they remember doing the fish fry for 500 and now it's only 75.
Yeah.
They remember when their parents were in their, when they were in their 40s or whatever, and they were running the church, it was packed.
Yeah.
Now that it's their kids' turn, they're maybe half at best.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guilt and shame with that, and we need to get rid of that. So, what should we not carry into 2026? I think that's the hard part.
That is the hard part.
Yeah, and some of the healthiest ministries right now, and they're either fresh expressions or church plants or various things, are smaller, clearer, focused ministries, and they know who they are and what they're doing. They're not sitting in meetings wondering, what kind of ministry should we do next? What should we do next? They have a mission. They have a plan.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as somebody who's actively involved in a couple of fresh expressions, I would say, it sometimes it will feel foreign if you're coming from specifically a traditional space, and so it requires an open mind, and leap of faith. Sometimes it requires us to change our expectations. That's another thing that we should not carry into 2026 is unrealistic expectations. The world our churches serve is dealing with a lot of different things, dealing with things on a level that we've probably never dealt with before. Like, yeah, sure, we've dealt with some of these things before, but it's like on another level now, like political division and economic pressure and gun violence and housing insecurity and mental health crisis. And
for us in particular, less and less people in church.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, not to say that the church has never been through these things, but for those of us who are still alive on this side of heaven, who are serving the church, this is a new feeling for a lot of us. And so, we can't expect Sunday morning alone to carry all of that for folks. And for, to honestly, to some degree, we never really expected Sunday morning to carry all of that load, whether or not we were dealing with that much before or not. But we recognize now that folks are their time during the week is competing with a lot of other things. And so we need to adjust to that. And, as a pastor, as someone who says, God is the foremost, the number one thing in my life, and therefore everything around my life shifts to make time for God. It can get really frustrating to say that we need to change the church's schedule to accommodate, folks who haven't made that decision. But that's the world that we live in, and we meet people where they are. And, we follow Christ who was in heaven and filled with all this glory, who decided to set all of that aside to come down and deal with us. And so I think if Christ can do that for me, I can, adjust my expectations and not think, people just need to come back to church and people just need to make church a priority and say, I'm going to meet them where they are. This is a priority for them. I'm going to adjust and see what ways can we proclaim the gospel in the lives that they are currently living, so that they will one day make Christ a priority.
Just plant a seed.
Exactly.
You don't have to.
Yeah. So what we don't want to do, what we don't need, is to carry into 2026 is the lie that if we just try harder, everything would be fine. Man.
I think I'm sure you've heard that. And I'm hearing it less and less.
Yeah.
Thank you. But I had heard for a long time this kind of putting the guilt and the shame on the upcoming generation for, well, why is the church in decline? Why is society seem so crazy? Why? And there was this general blaming. And I don't know if it came from a really toxic place or not, but it was hard for, those of us who are kind of coming up to hear this. Hey, you got to save the church.
Yeah.
Right? You're our saving grace. I can't tell you how many times.
We handed this over to you, and look what's happening.
Right, exactly. What are you doing with it? And I'm like, hey, maybe if you had handed us a better church. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Not really. No. But I run into this in church a lot, where a young couple or a young person will come into the church, a guest, and I have to coach the church members not to surround and smother.
Yeah.
Because it's an instinct for them to all just collapse around them, and then they say, they're overly grateful that they're there, which is a little uncomfortable. And then there are the questions. Where are the rest of you?
Yeah.
How come nobody else your age comes to church?
Yeah.
And I'm just listening going, God, I want to save that person.
Yeah.
And they're probably never going to come here again.
I totally get it. Like, I think it's coming from a good place, right? It's coming from a place of like, A, we love our church and we want to see our church grow. B, we want to let these new folks know that they're loved, that they're not just going to be ignored when they come to church. But then I think, it's interesting. I had someone on our staff here who said something to me. She's about a decade younger than I am. And she said, sometimes when people come to church, they just want to like disappear. And I really never really thought about that before. Like, people, when they're coming for the first time, they don't necessarily want to be approached.
They just want to watch.
And that's really hard to navigate, right?
Yeah.
Because some people do, some people don't. You don't know who does and who doesn't. And so that's a really delicate place to be in. So I think there's got to be
We've never treated it delicately. You're right. It is a delicate thing, but we've always treated it with a hammer.
Exactly. It's like, we need to welcome you, and the whole church will welcome you.
Yeah.
And
the old wisdom, in fact, and I remember it because I used it, was get them immediately, as soon as possible. Try to get them involved in an event or something. Yeah. And I remember hearing that, and I was like, yeah, that does sound right? The sooner you're involved in a group, right, the more closely you're. But if that's going to turn somebody off, if that's going to scare somebody away, then it's not.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, when I went to the first United Methodist Church ever, I was greeted really well at the door, and then my mom and I, we were worshiping together, and we were both essentially ushered into a relationship with another family, like right when we got there. So there was never a point where we felt like we disappeared, right? And so, of course, I want to do what was done for me. And I think that's what's happening with a lot of folks, is they want to do what was done for them.
Yeah, what worked for them.
But, folks are approaching church radically differently these days. And so that's one of those things where, we just kind of have to have that heart of experimentation and say, okay, what we've been doing isn't working.
Yeah.
Put
down all that. Yeah, put down all that shame.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Like, it worked, or whatever your parents' ministries or aunts or uncles or friends put it down. Right?
Yeah.
Don't the shame and listen. We are the Methodist, tradition, and we believe in the method. And one of those things is to report numbers and lots of numbers, and then some more numbers.
Oh, and you guys are reporting numbers right now.
Yeah, just numbers. And there's an instinct to just look at the numbers and feel some shame and guilt. If you're looking at the previous attendance and you're typing it in and it goes minus whatever percent, and you go, that doesn't look good.
Yeah.
Or budget. So next year you're like, well, we have even less for our budget and even less for our budgets, right? Not being what they used to be. Our buildings, maybe the maintenance isn't terrible, but it ain't great.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Instead of feeling that shame and guilt for, what we should do is buy a new unit, and you're the one
Yeah.
that's having to go, let's
HVAC
break out
unit.
the duct tape. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I think a good thing for us to remember in this season is, God is the one who gives the growth. And, scripture says
Spiritual.
we
Yes.
plant, we water, but God gives the growth. And so if there's not a growth in the budget, if there's not a growth in the attendance, it's not for us to, like we said earlier, it's not for us to feel like I'm just not working hard enough. I need to work more hours. I need to do more.
You may need to do less.
You may need to do
Watch
less.
out.
Exactly. More, yes, more leaning on the Spirit of God and what God is doing, and asking God for help, and asking your fellow Christians for help. Yes, more of that, absolutely. But no more hard work, no more, let's trust that the God who is the only one who gives the growth. Because remember, when things were growing, when you would, have the fish fry and 250 people came, that was also growth that only God provided. It wasn't you. You don't get to pat yourself on the back for that,
It wasn't the fish fry.
unfortunately. You worked really, really hard, and God used that. And God used that to bring the growth. But God is the one who's bringing the growth, right? And so if the growth isn't coming right now, we just need to lean on God and figure out what God wants us to do in this season.
And sometimes that means reaching out to each other. And I think
Absolutely.
I hope that one of the things we put down with that shame is reaching out to each other to say, hey, I need a new ministry.
Yeah.
I need something. I need a fresh thing. I need a fresh start. I need something to rejuvenate.
Yeah.
And it can be small. I remember, I think it was my last appointment. It was Mount Tabor out in Salisbury, and a little church outside of town. And, they were like every other little church outside of town, kind of slowly dying, but had a good solid core group of people whose parents had been there and grandparents had been there and great grandparents. And they were struggling because they don't have the numbers necessarily, or their financial means to make a huge impact on something. And it occurred to me when one of them was talking about their farm that there were a disproportionate number of people who knew how to grow things. One grant later, and big outdoor, it's not a farm, what's it called? A community garden, that's what it is.
Nice.
Community garden, and it looked fantastic. And of course, because they're out there in the country, they had several folks who know exactly how to build it, and it looked fantastic. And it was right out in front of the church. That was one of the things I said, you got to put it where everybody can see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they've loved it.
Yeah.
And it was something for them to do to rejuvenate themselves.
Yeah.
And then they give it away. They give all their produce and all that stuff away, and that's a
wonderful
blessing for them.
ministry.
It's just little.
Yeah.
It was not completely transformative, but most first steps aren't.
Exactly.
And so just yeah. Anyways, that was all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think too, like you said, it was it was a way for those folks to use their talents and give that back to God and give that back to their community. And it might not have blown up into this like massive farmers market or whatever, but it did give you an opportunity to serve, to give back to God and back to your community. And I think that that's important. And I think there's no shame in the size that it turned out to be. And it's the same thing for our congregations. There's no shame in your attendance numbers. There's no shame there. What it should prompt you to do, and regardless of what the numbers are, you should always be prompted.
See, there you go. Yeah, you caught yourself. He caught himself. I did. That's right, because we do that, don't we?
You should always be prompted to go back to God. Always. To go back to God, to say, God, in this new season, what are you calling me to do? Whether or not the numbers were, if the numbers are fantastic, you go back to God and say, God, what are you calling me to do with all these new people? If the numbers are low, you go back to God and say, God, what are you calling me to do with what feels like a remnant to me? If the numbers are the same, God, what are you calling me to do with these faithful people who have been coming for so long and who are continuing to be faithful to their church. But regardless of what the numbers say, we should be going back.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because I think, letting go of that shame starts with telling the truth. And I think we've tried to do that here. We've tried to talk about the truth of what God is calling us to turn away from a lot of those cultural standards that we've set for ourselves. And sometimes that means that we fail. And that's the truth of who we are. And like I said earlier, there's not a single biblical character that we have besides Jesus who didn't fail in some way. And thank God that
and Jesus might have argued. He might have had various points been like, no, y'all don't even know.
Exactly. Exactly. And thank God for our biblical authors who decided that they were going to keep that in there anyway.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. That's what we try to do here in the Means of Grace podcast.
I even dare say, if I might, just for everybody, at one point, Jesus calls that woman a dog. And she shoots back, hey now.
We don't know what's going on there. We don't know what's going on.
And Jesus goes, you know what? I think you're right.
Yeah.
Jesus has a moment where he's like,
So my epic fail is that I am fallen and finite, like all of us, right? Never perfect, and there's never enough time and in my life. And my epic fail is that I forgot that. I did. So my family, my wife and my children, I don't know if any of you know this. I don't think I've ever brought it up on the podcast before, but my wife's family is from Finland. And so my wife went with my children to Finland. And I thought, I have all this free time. You know what I mean? My family's gone. It's after Christmas. There's nothing going on at the church office. I have all this free time, right? And what did I do? I did what I always do. I said yes to too many things, right? And found myself in a position where I essentially had no free time, right? And so I just need to
exhausted.
Exactly, even more exhausted than I should have been.
That's the worst.
And so my epic fail is that I say yes to too many things. And in order for me to say a good yes, I have to say a lot of other no's. And I did not practice that while they were gone. They were gone for 11 days. And you would think that I would have been able to accomplish at least one thing while they were gone. And I did. I started a lot of things, had a lot of really good intentions. But I am still working on, I had one major goal and I am closer to finishing it, but I am not as close as I thought I would be at this point. So
that's an epic fail because we've all been there.
Wish I could get that time back, but that's the thing about time. You can't get it back.
No, that's right. And we do that. We're like, oh gosh, okay, and we've got to cram everything. Even something so wonderful as like a trip to Disney can be almost ruined by desperately trying to cram in too much stuff, and all it makes is stress.
Exactly.
Everybody's mad and everybody's running, and
then you look back on that Disney trip where we were late to everything, and that we missed out on a lot of the things we wanted to do.
Yep.
And
all the things. Man, if we had just slowed down and maybe just gone to just cut one or two things out, it would have made the whole experience, right? And we just can't think that way though so often.
Exactly.
Mine is asking for help, and that's always been something that I tend to do when I overbook. So I guess I go one step. I'm going to take Jesse's and go one step further. What mine is getting too busy or getting overwhelmed by what's going on, and then you start to think things like, "Wow, I didn't get anything done the last couple days, but tomorrow's Friday, and then it's the weekend, so I'll catch up. I'll do." And then Saturday ends up being crazy, and then Sunday you're exhausted, and then it's Monday and you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Now, dang it. It's like I should have asked for help, and then you don't. Still, you're like, oh, God, it's fine. I'll just get all my work done now so that for the whole week on Monday so that I can catch up during the week. And then that doesn't happen. And now you're 2 weeks behind. So asking for help. Not
Absolutely.
Just... I want to be able to ask for help as a matter of practice, and ever even as a moment of need because I don't trust myself.
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
So I've got to, and this is one of those, and we're going to talk about this in just a second, because the bishop is going to remind us to pursue an intentional spiritual life.
Yeah.
Which, it's a fancy way of saying just be intentional. Don't be haphazard about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I want that to be something that's less in the moment. Oh, now I need help. Okay, now I remember I got to ask for help because I probably won't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Practicing just asking for help before I need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just because,
Well,
why not?
absolutely. I think I'm not very good at this either. I think it's kind of like the individual level of what we were talking about before with the conference, right? It's churches thinking that they can go alone instead of asking for help.
Yeah.
And, we struggle with that too.
Yeah. And the churches sometimes even think, well, I won't ask for help because that's a burden. I don't want to burden the conference or another church. No.
Oh, and I think that all the time when it comes to other people. I'm like, I need help from this person, but I won't ask them because I don't want to be a burden to them. And I've been taught, and I need to be reminded that let them decide.
Yeah.
If they're too busy, and if they're too busy, then they can tell you that they're too busy.
Yeah, that's right. And oftentimes when I've been good about it, even if they say, no, I don't actually think I can help now, I'll get a call 2 weeks later, 6 weeks later with them asking me for some help.
Yeah.
Just because now they know, like, oh, you were vulnerable. You asked for my help. I can trust you to.
You can be interdependent in that way.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's just so much power in asking for help that we throw away because we're guilt riddled and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we don't want to be vulnerable because we don't want them to say no. We don't want to ask for help and then say, I can't do that. Then we kind of say, oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a fear of rejection in there for sure.
But you just have to say, okay, well, next time.
Next time.
Yeah.
I like that. And I like that you mentioned too that our bishop had a message for us. And we won't give you that whole message, but there will be a link to that message in the show notes for sure. But what's shaping in ministry right now, 2026, we have the opportunity to pursue an intentional spiritual life, to strengthen the mission of our local churches, and to engage in a public witness for the common good. So I hope you heard those three. Pursue an intentional spiritual life, strengthen the mission of our local churches, and engage in a public witness for the common good. 1 Corinthians 13, everybody. So we give thanks to God for you, your love for Jesus, your love for his church. And the bishop says he wishes that you abundance and newness of life in all that is ahead. And like I said, you can read the bishop's full notes, and there will be a link to that in the show notes for sure. Now, before we continue with today's podcast, I just wanted to take a moment to share a few things that are happening around the conference. Human Relations Day celebrates the call to build stronger, healthier connections between the church and the communities we serve. Together, we can foster meaningful relationships and support vital community and youth outreach. Explore these ready-to-use resources to educate, inspire, and encourage engagement in the ministry supported by Human Relations Day. The official date for Human Relations Day is Sunday, January 18th. However, you can celebrate the day whenever works with your church's schedule. Registration is open for the 2026 Peace Conference on March 13th through 15th, 2026 at the beautiful Lake Junaluska Conference and Retreat Center. Clergy and laity of all ages will gather to fellowship, dialogue, and learn with renowned peace builders. Through 3 days of worship, plenaries, workshops, hands-on shalom experiences, film screenings, and fellowship, there will be strategies and hopes of how people of faith can build bridges of peace across political, theological, and social divides. Equip and Connect is designed for and open to all local church leaders, serving as lay leaders or on church councils, trustees, pastor-parish relations committees, or finance committees. Connect with other leaders across your district and learn about roles, best practices, and new ideas for ministry. Districts are hosting their own in-person trainings on Sunday, January 25th at various locations. Plan to attend the one closest to you. And finally, there's a Grant Skill Builder session on January 20th, 2026 at 6 p.m. This will be a live Zoom training. It's designed for those who have completed Grants 101 or if you have any basic grant familiarity. That's it for now. Now let's head back to the podcast.
So we talked a little bit about intentional spiritual life, just that practice of, and it doesn't have to just be prayer, right? Or just reading the Bible. That's really anything related to ministry or spirituality that you make intentional instead of haphazard or in the moment.
Exactly.
Yeah, just be intentional. And then strengthening the mission of our local churches is all of our responsibilities. But what I want to dive into, Jesse, is engage in a public witness for the common good.
Yeah. In other words, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, right? Because the wider U.S. context is shaping ministry in real ways. We've got political polarization that's continuing to strain our congregations. You might be thinking, it's not straining my congregation, but it might be straining the relationship between your congregation and another local church in your community. Economic anxiety is affecting giving and volunteer capacity as well. We recently had the Reverend Dr. Luke Edwards on our podcast, reminding us that immigration has become the topic of the day and the U.S. military actions around the world as well. All of these things are affecting us. Churches aren't being asked to solve these questions, though. They're not being asked to solve these things, but we are being asked to show up faithfully within them. We got to remember that, we serve the God of all things. And so we don't get to separate ourselves and separate the witness of the gospel from these things.
No. And our faith doesn't stop anywhere. It's not, politics stops at the water's edge, not faith. And that's something important to remember, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so in all of this, and there's a growing mental health problem in this country, from being overworked and burned out to external stresses, whether that's political strife or international strife, which means pastors are being asked to do far more pastoral care. And even whether you know that or not, clergy, if you're one to do the numbers and you're not doing more visitations or you're not doing more counseling or things, that does not mean you are exempt. Believe me when I say you are doing a dozen little psych sessions with your congregations more than you ever were before. A lot of those conversations that used to be about the 17th hole on the golf course are now about U.S. military engagement in Venezuela. Instead of talking about a month from now, we're going to have, tulips for this particular program, you're being asked questions about political instability and taxes or something, and what the church can do about immigration. And all of those are cumulative. Congregations are becoming places of refuge. Churches are becoming public witnesses. And for a long time, the church has kind of shied a little bit away from that. And we are having to step back front and center. And I think Dan Pizzette has said this, that as the government, and this is kind of what he said, as the government seems to be backing off of the social welfare things, not completely, but taking some steps back away from it, that's our chance.
That's our chance, yeah.
For a long time, and this is unfortunate, but true, guys, we've been leaning a bit on the government's, giving and giving to poor people in particular.
Yeah.
It's time to step back up again.
Absolutely.
Dan has said this, that it's going to be, there's a time coming, if it's not already here, where food banks and pantries and places of refuge and sanctuary are going to become essential instead of just, kind of offsetting what the government just can't quite.
Yeah.
We're going to have to step back up again.
Yeah.
And all of these things are hard.
Absolutely.
All of these things are us becoming public witnesses for
Absolutely.
the common good.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's what we, as the local church, is there for, right? As the local church. And I think emphasis on that local part too. It's like, how are you being a public witness to your specific community, right? Because, that's going to look different based on where you're at.
Sure.
That's going to look different based on what your leadership is like, who your pastors are, who your lay leaders are. That's going to look different, absolutely. But it shouldn't be non-existent, right? We've got some pastors who will preach this type of thing from the pulpit. We've got some pastors that will reserve these types of conversations for small groups. But, we are all being called to be a public witness in the way that it fits our culture, our church culture, our community. So we don't ever get to say no. We don't ever get to turn a blind eye to these things, but we do have to, in our way, in the way that our community, the community around our church, which is why we're local, in the way that community responds well to these things. And, we don't have to do this alone. Like we said earlier, we are,
please don't.
We're a part of the connection. Absolutely. Take that one step further as well. I hope that there are organizations in your community that you can partner with, so you don't have to feel like you are recreating the wheel. That you can partner with, come alongside folks in your community who are doing this work, so that you can feel, so that you don't have to feel like you're alone, but also don't have to feel like you're creating everything from scratch either. This is a brilliant opportunity for us to be the light that Christ has called us to be. And yeah, it's our gospel witness to the world. And it's not, on the one hand, I wish that we didn't have to. On the other hand, I'm excited for the opportunity to introduce people to Christ, the same Christ that stepped in and saved me, give people an opportunity to experience that same Christ who will step in and walk alongside them in their lives as well.
Jesse, was your heart strangely warmed?
My heart strangely warmed. My heart is strangely warmed by, honestly, just having an opportunity to do this podcast again with you.
Isn't it awesome? I love it. I love it. We got so much cool stuff coming up 2026. Not the least of which is we are hoping to get these more and more of these episodes out and on a regular timetable. So
yeah.
We can make part of your weekly kind of habits. We all have those, right?
Exactly.
On this day we do this. On this day we do this. So we're hoping that as we usually try to record on Mondays, we're going to hopefully get our episodes out on Thursdays. So if all goes well and the creek don't rise, we will be doing that on Thursdays. So look ahead for that.
Absolutely.
Strangely heartwarming. We have upcoming the MLK service, which, by the way, is January 17th, this coming Saturday, at University City Church at 10 a.m. But that's not the strangely, we do that every year. The strangely heartwarming part for me is that last year I took a congregation member of mine, Miss Jessica Barnwell, to this service. I did not volunteer. I was asked by her to take her there. And I said, of course. Right? Yeah, I would say she asked, but it wasn't really. It was more of a just sort of emphatic fact.
Yeah.
I love that. It was just, that's what I was going to be doing.
I was
going to be driving her to the MLK service, so that's what I did. But when we were coming back, she loved the service and she said she wanted to participate. And I said, oh, well, okay, I'll give it. But sure enough, we were able to get her a spot, so she's going to open us up with her violin music.
Well, I love
for the service, 9:30 a.m. before the service starts, as we lead into the 10 a.m. service. So I hope you'll come and get there a little early and hear from Miss Jessica Barnwell. She'll warm your heart.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So we hope in these coming weeks and months to walk alongside of you through 2026. And we're going to be doing some lots of interviews with lots of conference staff, clergy, people from outside the conference this year. We have a lot of cool guests that we're looking forward to. Jesse, as we move into 2026, what don't we need to carry? What do we need to carry, and what do we not need to carry?
And what don't we need to carry? Yeah, absolutely. I think what we want to definitely focus on carrying humility. We want to focus on carrying connection. We want to focus on carrying curiosity. And in this season, let's set down the shame. Let's set down the unrealistic expectations. Let's set down the weight of trying to be everything and just be who God is calling us to be.
Absolutely. And Means of Grace exists because none of us were meant to do this alone. If you're listening while wondering what to keep and what to release, you're already doing work. Grace meets us lighter than we arrived.
I love that. I love that. So wherever you serve, whatever you're carrying, may this be the year you travel a little lighter, right? I think there's a promise that if we cast our burdens on Christ,
that's right,
then we get to carry Christ's load instead, right?
That must mean that God wants our spirits to be lighter.
Absolutely.
Somehow we are more free to feel the move of the Spirit that way.
Yeah. So let's say yes. Let's say yes to that invitation, right? We'll walk it together with Christ and together with one another. So join us in our upcoming episodes as we do interviews with Rod Ingram and In-Young Lee and Glenn Kinkin, our new conference treasurer, and many, many others. So until next time, we want to encourage you to like, to subscribe, to share, to let folks know about this podcast, to continue to support us as you always have. And we will see you in our next podcast. Go in peace.